From the heartbreaking confessions of Marilyn Monroe to the defiant stand of Bette Davis, these aren't just rumors. They're real stories of struggle, survival, and sacrifice. Journey with us behind the silver screen as we uncover 15 casting couch scandals that rocked Golden Age Hollywood, the secrets, the legends, and the truth that forever changed the industry. Marilyn Monroe's revelation. Marilyn Monroe, an icon whose name remains synonymous with Golden Age Hollywood, is often remembered for her dazzling smile, her breathy voice, and her classic roles. But beneath the surface of glitz and fame was a truth Monroe herself bravely hinted at, a truth that spoke volumes about how Hollywood operated behind closed doors. In countless interviews, Monroe reflected on her journey, never shying away from exposing the realities she and many others faced as they pursued their dreams. She once commented, with a bittersweet honesty, "I've endured more auditions behind closed doors than most people would ever believe." Monroe's rise was not handed to her. Rather, it came at a steep personal cost. She described a world where promises were made, but often at a price no young hopeful should have to pay. Monroe's encounters weren't isolated or unique. They mirrored the experiences of many aspiring stars, especially women, who found that talent alone was rarely enough to open the gates of opportunity. Gatekeepers of the industry, producers, directors, and studio heads could wield unchecked power over careers. Young actresses were often faced with difficult decisions, balancing ambition with the uncomfortable realities of their environment. The couch became a metaphor for a much larger system of power, where roles and contracts might depend not just on skill, but on acquiescing to unspoken demands. Monroe's forthrightness helped shine a light on a practice that, while quietly understood within the industry, was publicly ignored for decades. She famously remarked that for some, making it in Hollywood was less about talent and more about surviving the system's hidden tests. Despite all she endured, Monroe never lost her sense of self. Her openness about her struggles, her willingness to confront the truth, made her not just a symbol of beauty and talent, but also of courage. Her story encouraged others to speak out, creating cracks in the wall of silence that would, many years later, finally begin to break apart. Monroe's legacy is not just found in her films, but also in her willingness to share the unvarnished truth, a legacy that has helped many to see the price that came with fame, and to question why such a price was ever demanded. Judy Garland. Judy Garland's story is as legendary as it is heartbreaking. As a child star discovered by MGM, she quickly became America's sweetheart. Yet, behind the iconic status was a reality marked by control, manipulation, and an environment where young performers were vulnerable to those in power. Garland was just a teenager when she signed her contract with MGM, stepping into a world where every aspect of her life, her diet, her appearance, her schedule, was managed by adults whose interests didn't always align with her well-being. She later recalled that the pressures extended far beyond professional demands. There were executives and studio figures who took advantage of their positions, often blurring the lines between mentorship and inappropriate behavior. She faced constant scrutiny and was subjected to a level of control that few could withstand. Garland once confided that she felt more like property than a person. The pressures were overwhelming. If she rebelled or spoke up, she risked losing everything she'd worked for. The unspoken expectations, the offers of advancement in exchange for obedience, were all part of a system that prioritized profit and power above the welfare of young talent. The consequences for Garland were profound. The experience left emotional scars, contributing to struggles she would battle for the rest of her life. Yet, she remained resilient. She became a symbol of both triumph and survival, her extraordinary talent shining through in every performance, her vulnerability making her one of the most relatable stars of all time. Judy Garland's story serves as a cautionary tale, revealing the cost of unchecked authority, and the danger of an industry that too often protected its own reputation over the well-being of its stars. Her legacy is more than her legendary performances. It's a reminder of what can happen when ambition is exploited and innocence is lost. Through her courage in speaking about her experiences, Garland helped pave the way for future generations to demand a safer, more just Hollywood. Joan Collins. Joan Collins was on the brink of one of Hollywood's most coveted roles, the leading part in Cleopatra. But her experience with the casting couch proved that even the brightest opportunities could come with an unbearable cost. Collins has spoken candidly about her ordeal, describing how a major producer made it clear that the role she dreamed of would be hers only if she agreed to certain conditions behind closed doors. For Collins, the choice was stark: comply and secure her career's biggest break, or refuse and risk professional retaliation. She chose to walk away, sacrificing the part rather than her self-respect. The role eventually went to another actress, but Collins's choice came with a personal cost. After the incident, she found herself sidelined in the industry, her name quietly removed from casting lists. For years, she wondered if speaking out would only damage her further. Yet, her decision to prioritize her dignity became an act of defiance that inspired others. Collins's experience was not unique. Many actresses were confronted with similar ultimatums: accept the advances of a powerful figure, or see their dreams stall. The system was designed to make silence the safest choice. But Collins's refusal, and her willingness to share her story, helped to expose the ugly realities lurking beneath Hollywood's golden surface. Her later success as an actress and author showed that integrity could endure, even in an environment that so often rewarded compliance over courage. Joan Collins's story is a testament to the power of saying no, and a reminder that some victories are measured not in roles won, but in self-respect preserved. Shirley Temple. Shirley Temple's story is as uplifting as it is sobering. The curly-haired wonder became America's symbol of hope during the hardest years of the Great Depression, dazzling audiences with her charm and precocious talent. But behind the scenes of her spectacular success was a world far less innocent than the one she inhabited on screen. At the age of 3, Shirley Temple entered the world of show business, a realm dominated by adults with ambitions and appetites far removed from the world of childhood. While most of her memories from her early years were filled with hard work, song, and dance, there were darker moments that even the most careful family could not entirely shield her from. One incident, which Temple later described in her memoir, stands out as a stark illustration of the risks faced by young stars in old Hollywood. She was only 12 when she was called to a meeting with a prominent MGM executive, an event she expected to be a standard conversation about her next project. Instead, she found herself confronted with behavior that was not only confusing, but deeply unsettling. Her youth and innocence were no protection against the entitled conduct of those who wielded power at the studios. Thankfully, Temple's mother was vigilant, accompanying her to most meetings and watching over her career with fierce devotion. But even so, the environment was one where lines were often crossed, and the pressure to please those in charge was ever present. Many child actors of the era, without such guardians, were not as fortunate. The system that produced Shirley Temple's meteoric rise was also the one that put her, and countless other young performers, in harm's way. Studio executives saw child stars as valuable commodities, and the drive for profit often outstripped any consideration for their safety or well-being. For every moment of joy captured on celluloid, there was another where a child was forced to grow up too fast, to navigate adult intentions in a world that seemed to care little for their innocence. Temple's later life was marked by advocacy and public service, shaped in part by the lessons she learned in Hollywood. Her candor about the dangers she faced helped to bring attention to the need for stronger protections for young performers. Through her resilience and her honesty, Shirley Temple remains not only an icon of the silver screen, but also a symbol of hope for change and a safer, more caring industry. Louis B. Mayer. Louis B. Mayer's reign at MGM was marked by extraordinary influence and a paternalistic approach that shaped the studio system for decades. Mayer liked to think of himself as a father figure to the stars he discovered, guided, and, in some cases, controlled. But this fatherly care often came with expectations and demands that had nothing to do with the business of acting. Mayer was one of the most powerful men in Hollywood during the Golden Age. As the head of the most successful studio of the time, he made and broke careers with a word. Stars such as Judy Garland, Elizabeth Taylor, and Ava Gardner all found their destinies in Mayer's hands. The MGM lot was his kingdom, and he ruled it with a combination of charisma, authority, and, as many would later reveal, a willingness to blur professional boundaries. Actresses who came to MGM seeking stardom were often faced with Mayer's unspoken rules. According to many memoirs and interviews, meetings in his office were rarely just about scripts or roles. Mayer was known for his long, personal interviews, where he would test the limits of his influence. Some women described uncomfortable encounters, moments when the conversation drifted from the professional to the personal, and when resistance could cost a promising career. Those who played along were rewarded with opportunities, publicity, and the chance to become household names. Those who pushed back, or simply failed to please Mayer, often found themselves relegated to lesser projects or dropped from the studio's roster altogether. He was known to keep lists, not only of talent, but of those who crossed him or refused his advances. Mayer's public image remained carefully crafted. To the outside world, he was a patron of the arts, a builder of stars, and a loving patriarch. But those who worked closely with him knew the real power dynamics at play. His ability to shape and control the lives of his stars was both awe-inspiring and, at times, deeply troubling. In later years, as the culture of Hollywood began to shift, and more women spoke openly about their experiences, Mayer's legacy became increasingly complicated. His contributions to film are undeniable, but so are the stories of those who paid a hidden price for their success under his rule. Mayer's story is a stark reminder of how unchecked power can warp relationships and create environments where ambition and vulnerability are easily exploited. It's a lesson Hollywood, and the world, continues to reckon with. Harry Cohn. Harry Cohn, the tough-talking head of Columbia Pictures, was as famous for his volatile personality as he was for his eye for talent. The stories about Cohn's management style are legendary, filled with tales of temper, intimidation, and a relentless drive for box office success. But for the hopeful actresses who came to Columbia seeking a break, another side of Cohn soon became apparent, one that turned the studio into a proving ground where personal and professional boundaries were regularly tested. Cohn's reputation preceded him. He was notorious for his private auditions, interviews and meetings held behind closed doors, where the outcome often depended on more than just talent or screen presence. The rumor mill on the studio lot worked overtime, and everyone knew that getting ahead at Columbia could mean navigating a maze of Cohn's expectations, many of which were never put into writing. The actresses who resisted Cohn's advances often paid a heavy price. There are stories of careers derailed overnight, of promising young talents who found themselves inexplicably dropped from projects or denied the publicity campaigns that could have made them stars. For those who complied, the rewards could be great: a featured role, a contract extension, a sudden rise up the ranks. Cohn's power at Columbia was virtually absolute. His decisions were final, and his word was law. Many who worked with him described an atmosphere of fear and uncertainty, where loyalty was prized, but never enough to guarantee security. As long as Cohn was satisfied, an actress could thrive. If she disappointed him, her prospects might vanish without explanation. Despite the stories, the press and the public largely remained unaware of Cohn's behind-the-scenes behavior for decades. The studio system protected its own, ensuring that scandals rarely reached the outside world. Cohn himself cultivated an image of hard-nosed professionalism, and Columbia Pictures became known for its hit films and its ability to launch stars, even as the darker side of the studio's success remained hidden. Cohn's legacy is a study in contrasts. He built Columbia into a Hollywood powerhouse, and many stars owed their careers to his vision. Yet the toll on those who were forced to navigate his personal demands is an essential part of the story, a reminder of how power, left unchecked, can warp even the most glittering of dreams. Daryl Xanic. Daryl F. Xanic was a man of immense vision, a producer whose films helped shape the identity of 20th Century Fox and the trajectory of American cinema. But while his professional achievements are widely celebrated, his personal habits, especially the infamous 4 p.m. meeting, became the stuff of legend on the Fox lot. Xanic's routine was well known within the industry. Every afternoon, he would set aside a block of time for private appointments with young actresses who hoped to catch their big break. These sessions, which began as business meetings, were whispered about as something much more. The pattern was so regular that it became a source of jokes and gossip, even as it created a quiet sense of dread among those called to his office. For many aspiring stars, an audience with Xanic was both an opportunity and a risk. His approval could fast-track a career, turning an unknown into a household name. But the meetings often had an unspoken price, one that went beyond the requirements of the job. Those who went along with Xanic's expectations frequently found themselves cast in major films, their paths to fame cleared by his powerful endorsement. Those who resisted, however, discovered just how quickly fortune could turn. Some found themselves passed over for roles they had been promised, while others saw their contracts quietly terminated. The system was self-perpetuating. Few dared to speak out, knowing the risks to their livelihoods, and so the cycle continued. Xanic's appointments weren't unique to him. They were part of a broader culture that blurred the lines between professional evaluation and personal interest. What made Xanic's case notable was how open the secret was. Everyone knew, but no one acted. The studio, eager to protect its brand and its bottom line, ignored the stories as long as the hits kept coming. Looking back, Xanic's career is a paradox. His instincts and energy helped define a studio and an era, but his personal conduct left a trail of missed opportunities and damaged spirits in its wake. The daily appointment became a symbol of the compromises and dangers that too many faced in pursuit of stardom, a reminder that the price of success in old Hollywood was often set far too high. Rita Hworth. Rita Hayworth's life reads like a classic Hollywood screenplay. Dazzling beauty, meteoric rise, and a private battle against forces beyond her control. Born Margarita Carmen Cancino, she started her career under the strict guidance of her father, a professional dancer who pushed her relentlessly onto the stage and, later, into the movie business. While her talent and perseverance led to stardom, her journey through Hollywood was shaped as much by the expectations of others as by her own dreams. Hayworth's early experiences in the studio system revealed just how little power a young woman had over her own destiny. Executives, producers, and agents each had their own visions for her, and their ambitions often took priority over her comfort and agency. To some, she was a commodity, her image shaped and reshaped by men in boardrooms who decided how she should look, speak, and behave, both on and off screen. As she became one of the era's most recognizable faces, Hworth found that success came with strings attached. She later described how those in positions of power went out of their way to exploit her, expecting her to conform to a narrow image of femininity and charm that pleased studio heads, but left little room for personal boundaries. Offers of roles and contracts frequently came with unspoken understandings about loyalty and gratitude, expectations that extended far beyond professionalism. Behind the camera, the pressures never let up. Hworth faced endless scrutiny about her relationships, appearance, and willingness to participate in publicity stunts that benefited the studio, but rarely brought her peace. Rumors about her private life often overshadowed her achievements, with gossip columnists eager to report on her supposed affairs, marriages, and personal troubles. Despite these challenges, Hworth continued to captivate audiences with her charisma and talent. Her performance in Gilda remains one of the most iconic in film history, her on-screen confidence belying the vulnerability she often felt. Off-screen, she longed for respect and independence, hopes that were repeatedly tested by an industry built on imbalance. Hworth's later years were marked by reflection and candor. She openly acknowledged how the Hollywood system took advantage of her and others like her, using their dreams as leverage. Yet, in spite of the exploitation, she managed to reclaim parts of her life, advocating for herself and seeking more meaningful roles as her career evolved. Rita Hworth's legacy endures not just because of her beauty and talent, but because of her resilience. Her story stands as a reminder of how easily ambition can be manipulated in an environment that values profits over people, and of the courage it takes to speak up for dignity and self-worth. Loretta Young. Loretta Young's story is one of both dazzling success and profound secrecy. Entering the industry as a child, she grew up before the cameras, her career spanning silent films, classic Hollywood dramas, and later television stardom. But behind her poised exterior was a personal story shaped by pressures no performer should have to endure. Young's life changed dramatically during the production of a major film with Clark Gable, one of the era's most celebrated leading men. What began as a professional collaboration became an ordeal that would alter her life forever. The result was an unplanned pregnancy, a circumstance that, in the tightly controlled world of the studio system, could mean scandal and the end of a promising career. In those days, a star's public image was everything. Studios controlled not just contracts, but the personal lives of their stars, using morality clauses and publicity teams to maintain the illusion of perfection. When Young discovered she was expecting, she faced impossible choices. Revealing the truth could destroy both her and Gable's careers. Keeping the secret meant living a lie. Young made a heartbreaking decision. She left Hollywood for several months, giving birth in secret, and later arranging to adopt her own daughter. The story she and the studio crafted, a narrative of charity and maternal instinct, protected her reputation, but cost her years of quiet anguish. For decades, neither Young nor her daughter spoke publicly about the truth, keeping up appearances to satisfy the studio's demands. It was only after Young's passing that her family shared her story, shedding light on the lengths to which women in Hollywood were forced to go to protect themselves. The ordeal had lasting effects on Young's life and relationships, but she never let it define her career. She returned to the screen with renewed determination, earning an Academy Award, and later finding success on television. Young's story, once hidden in the shadows, has become a powerful example of survival and resilience. Her ability to persevere, despite impossible pressures and a culture that prioritized secrecy over support, remains inspiring. Today, her experiences serve as a reminder of the sacrifices demanded by an industry that too often prized image over integrity, and of the strength it takes to reclaim one's own narrative. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo's allure is legendary, her mysterious persona as carefully constructed as any of her performances. Yet the real Garbo, behind the enigmatic smile and unforgettable gaze, was someone who understood early on the dangers of unchecked power in Hollywood, and resolved to protect herself at all costs. Garbo's journey began in Sweden, where her early films earned her the attention of American studio heads. When she arrived in Hollywood, she encountered the casting couch culture that so many other aspiring actresses had faced. Yet Garbo was different. She quickly realized that her greatest strength was her ability to control her own image and interactions. Unlike many of her peers, Garbo rarely attended studio parties, declined most social invitations, and insisted on privacy in all dealings. Her air of mystery became her shield, discouraging advances that others were often pressured to endure. Studio executives found her inscrutable, unable to penetrate the carefully maintained wall she built around herself. There were stories of Garbo turning down roles, contracts, and even relationships when they came with expectations she found objectionable. She understood the unspoken currency of favors and access in the industry, and used her growing fame to resist it. Instead of playing along, she forged her own path, accepting the risk that her defiance might cost her work. Garbo's success proved that it was possible, though not easy, to survive in Hollywood without succumbing to its darker demands. Her unique approach, sometimes interpreted as aloofness, was in reality an act of self-preservation in a world that often saw young women as commodities rather than artists. Her independence inspired countless others, showing that boundaries could be a source of strength, not weakness. As the years went by, Garbo's legend only grew. She retired from acting at the height of her fame, further cementing her reputation as the ultimate unattainable star. In doing so, she escaped the fate of many who stayed too long and became casualties of the system. Garbo's story is a lesson in agency and self-respect. Her refusal to participate in Hollywood's unspoken bargains helped pave the way for future generations of performers who demanded to be seen and treated as more than objects of desire. Through her example, Garbo showed that real power sometimes lies not in saying yes, but in knowing when and how to say no. Bette Davis. Bette Davis's legacy is not just that of an extraordinary actress, but of a woman who repeatedly stood up to the most powerful men in Hollywood, including her own boss, Jack Warner. Known for her sharp wit, fierce independence, and willingness to speak her mind, Davis challenged the system that made and sometimes broke stars. Davis entered Warner Brothers at a time when contracts bound actors to studios, giving executives immense control over every aspect of their lives and careers. Like so many women in the industry, she was quickly confronted with unspoken expectations, ones that extended beyond acting ability. Stories abounded of executives who used their positions to demand favors, and Davis was no exception. But unlike many others, she refused to play along. Davis's clashes with Jack Warner became legendary. She openly resisted roles she felt were beneath her, or that seemed like punishments for not conforming. When she learned that refusing certain advances could mean being assigned undesirable projects or being left idle, Davis didn't capitulate. Instead, she took the unprecedented step of suing Warner Brothers, seeking to break her contract and find artistic freedom elsewhere. The lawsuit was a bold move, one that shocked Hollywood and risked her entire career. Though she ultimately lost the case, Davis's fight made headlines and changed perceptions. Her willingness to air the industry's dirty laundry inspired others to question their own treatment and demand better conditions. Throughout her career, Davis continued to push back against the old guard. She became a champion for artists' rights, a mentor to younger actresses, and a symbol of resistance in an industry that often punished those who dared to speak up. Davis's story illustrates that defiance can come at a cost, but it can also spark change. Her battles helped loosen the grip studios had over their stars and brought greater attention to the need for fairness and respect in the workplace. Bette Davis is remembered not just for her unforgettable performances, but for her courage to challenge the system, opening doors for those who would come after her. Jean Harlo. Jean Harlo's name evokes images of platinum hair, quick wit, and irresistible screen presence. She was the quintessential blonde bombshell of the 1930s, lighting up the silver screen with a combination of innocence and allure. But behind the persona, Harlo's ascent in Hollywood reflected the price that many young women paid in an era when charm and talent were too often seen as invitations rather than qualifications. Harlo's journey began under the watchful eyes of those who believed they knew what was best for her, including her first husband, Paul Byrne, an influential studio executive. It's been widely discussed that Byrne and others in her circle steered her career not just through advice, but through strategic relationships and introductions that sometimes placed Harlo in compromising situations. This was a time when introductions to the right people could open doors, but those doors could also lead to unwelcome advances and pressures that had nothing to do with acting. As Harlo's fame grew, so did the expectations. Behind the glamorous facade, she confided in close friends about feeling used by those around her, people who seemed more interested in what she could offer them, rather than in her well-being or happiness. She was sometimes treated as a commodity, a marketable asset for the studio's bottom line, rather than as a person with hopes and vulnerabilities. Despite these challenges, Harlo maintained a radiant spirit, forging strong friendships with fellow actors and crew members who respected her. Still, the Hollywood machine was relentless. Rumors swirled about what it took to get and keep a leading role, and stories circulated about casting sessions where professionalism gave way to expectation. Tragically, Harlo's life was cut short at just 26. Her untimely passing added another layer of mystery and melancholy to her legacy. Yet, even in her brief career, Harlo left an indelible mark, not only as an actress, but as a symbol of both the opportunities and dangers inherent in Hollywood's golden age. Her memory endures not just because of her roles in films like Dinner at 8 or Bombshell, but because her life embodies the complexity of old Hollywood. Jean Harlo remains an emblem of the bright promise and deep shadows of a time when the pursuit of stardom too often meant navigating a world where boundaries could be easily erased by the powerful. Moren OHara. Moren OHara's career was defined by her fiery red hair, unyielding spirit, and the same strength she brought to her legendary screen roles. Known as much for her off-screen integrity as for her performances in classics like The Quiet Man and How Green Was My Valley, OHara stood apart from many of her contemporaries in her determination to set boundaries and defend them. In the 1940s, when stories of inappropriate conduct were most often swept under the rug, OHara did the unthinkable. She publicly accused a studio executive of improper behavior. After being cornered in an office and subjected to an unwanted advance, OHara made her experience known. Her accusations, reported in the press, were shocking for the time. Rather than retreat, she confronted the rumors head-on, refusing to be intimidated by threats that she'd never work in this town again. OHara's stance was more than personal. It was a direct challenge to the system that allowed such abuses to continue unchecked. Unlike many actresses who, lacking leverage, suffered in silence, OHara was already a star. Her box office draw and strong sense of self-protection gave her a rare measure of security. She continued to land major roles, her career surviving the backlash that could have ended a less established performer's trajectory. Her willingness to speak out became legendary among her peers. OHara insisted that dignity was not negotiable, even in an industry where powerful men often acted with impunity. Her example gave hope to others facing similar situations, providing a template for how to survive and even thrive without compromising personal integrity. Despite her principled stand, OHara never painted herself as a victim. Instead, she saw her actions as an extension of the values she brought from her Irish upbringing, a belief in fairness, courage, and self-respect. She remained proud of her heritage, and often spoke of the importance of standing up for what was right, regardless of the cost. OHara's story endures as a testament to resilience. In a world that tried to dictate the terms of her success, she wrote her own rules. Her legacy is not just in her films, but in her fortitude, a beacon for future generations determined to find their place in Hollywood without sacrificing their soul. Frances Farmer. Frances Farmer was a woman ahead of her time. Brilliant, outspoken, and unafraid to question authority. But in the rigid world of Golden Age Hollywood, her refusal to play by the unspoken rules, including the casting couch system, marked her as a troublemaker. The very independence that should have been celebrated became the reason for her undoing. Farmer arrived in Hollywood in the late 1930s with a reputation for intelligence and artistic integrity. She quickly gained attention for her performances, which were lauded for their depth and nuance. But unlike many of her peers, Farmer refused to attend the endless round of parties, dinners, and meetings that were unofficially part of every actress's job description. She rejected advances from powerful producers and agents, and she was vocal about her desire for more meaningful roles. Hollywood, however, was not ready for a woman who challenged the status quo. Her nonconformity, combined with her unwillingness to comply with behind-the-scenes demands, led to her being labeled as difficult. She found herself increasingly sidelined, cast in lesser roles, or given contracts that tied her to projects she had no interest in. The system was designed to reward compliance and punish defiance, and Farmer became its most visible casualty. The pressure mounted, both professionally and personally. Gossip columns painted her as unstable, and when her frustration boiled over into public outbursts, the studios used her behavior as justification to push her even further to the margins. Eventually, Farmer was committed to psychiatric institutions, sometimes involuntarily, where she endured years of harsh treatment. Farmer's story is one of heartbreak and injustice, but it is also a reminder of the high price paid by those who refuse to conform. Her struggle did not go unnoticed. Decades later, her life became a symbol for artists' rights and personal autonomy, inspiring books, films, and a re-evaluation of how Hollywood treats those who dare to challenge its norms. Though Frances Farmer's career was cut short by a system determined to break her spirit, her legacy lives on as a testament to the cost and the courage of resistance. Her story is a warning and an inspiration, a call to build an industry where creative independence is honored, not punished. Peg Entwistle. Peg Entwistle's name has become almost mythic in Hollywood lore, a symbol of the immense hope and equally great heartbreak that the movie business could bring. Though her career was brief and her personal story shrouded in sorrow, Entwistle's life is often invoked as a cautionary tale about the vulnerabilities faced by aspiring young talent in the old studio system. Entwistle began her career on the stage, where her talent quickly attracted attention. Like so many before her, she dreamed of screen stardom and traveled to Hollywood in search of opportunity. But she entered a world where the casting couch culture was quietly pervasive, with powerful figures controlling the fates of newcomers through opaque processes and backroom dealings. Accounts from those close to Entwistle suggest she encountered advances and offers that had little to do with her ability as an actress. For every hopeful audition, there was the possibility of an unspoken test, one that required more than just reading lines or delivering a monologue. In the competitive and often unforgiving environment of early Hollywood, the pressure to comply could be overwhelming, especially for those without connections or advocates. Entwistle's struggle to find steady work was compounded by the emotional strain of repeated rejection and the realization that talent alone was not always enough. The sense of being used, dismissed, or invisible in a system stacked against outsiders weighed heavily on her. Her brief appearance in the film 13 Women offered a glimmer of hope, but not the breakthrough she had longed for. While the details of Entwistle's final days remain a matter of speculation, her story has come to represent the silent desperation felt by many who arrived in Hollywood with dreams, only to find the path to success blocked by forces beyond their control. She is often remembered in connection with the famous Hollywood sign, which has become a lasting symbol of both ambition and disillusionment. Peg Entwistle's legacy endures not just in the cautionary tale of dashed dreams, but in the light her story shines on the need for compassion and reform. Her experience, and the struggles of others like her, remind us that Hollywood's greatest responsibility is not just to entertain, but to protect the humanity of those who bring its stories to life. If you found these stories compelling, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more eye-opening journeys into Hollywood's past and present. Join the conversation. Your voice is part of this story too. Until next time, thanks for watching, and keep seeking the stories that matter.